Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of NFL Fantasy Matchup. There's only a couple episodes that we have because it's playoff season. Some of us are on bye, some of us are playing against each other, but here we are. Jim, Jed, welcome.
Morning.
Jed, we are just talking about you and I are playing each other this week on the 1K League.
I know it sucks, right? I wanted the whole thing was I wanted one of the three of us to be able to represent and win. So Tommy didn't make it. He just barely got edged out, but Jimmy and I got in. And now we have to play each other in the first matchup. That stinks. But we'll see, man. It's a tight. We'll see. I mean, there's the two guys at the top who've been really, if you look at their points, they've really
Yeah,
had
they're
the
really
lead.
good.
Yeah, so it might come down, but I forgot. I think we have first, second, and third place. So if we can squeeze into one of those three, I think we'll do okay.
The hard part is, I don't know about your team. My team it started off really strong, but it's going into the playoffs relatively weak. And I'm a little iffy. Even if I get past you, I don't know if I have enough to get past those two other guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, at this point, it's just survival, but you never know, guys. I mean, if you picked up Isaiah Guerrero
Brendo.
last week, he had a great game. If you had Charbonnet filling in for Kenny Walker, he had a great game. So like anything can turn in just 1 week, and so that's why we just gotta fight. We just gotta fight this week, survive, and get into the next one. And then you'll never know what can happen.
In the other
Well,
league
because
that Tom
if you look at Isaac's team, right? Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback. He may throw a lot of interception. Jennings over in San Francisco, Deebo Samuel's come out. He's unhappy. They may actually end up throwing a lot to Deebo Samuel, so he may really be affected. Kyron Williams is good. Dado is coming on, and Justin Jefferson, so he has a very good team. On the other end, Tyreek Hill, Jameson Williams, Bijan Robinson. So it does have some, or Brian Robinson. It's a little inconsistent on that other team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just never know. That's the whole thing, right? It's the nice thing about fantasy is there's always a chance because there can be surprise players. That's why I was debating, like, do you want to go with a tried and true, let's say, for example, Jalen Warren? I know I can get 8 to 10 points from him. There is a chance he could jump off. Or do I throw in like a Noah Gray from Kansas City who
Yeah.
had 2 weeks where he got 2 touchdowns? I mean, that's the tricky kind of decision you got to make.
And then from that point on, AJ Brown. Hopefully, a lot of times he and Jalen Hurts talked it out, and they're no longer fighting. And for this week, he'll be throwing a lot to AJ Brown. But I also see that you're playing Sam Darnold against Chicago and benching Baker Mayfield, and so that's a good one as well too. Or that's an interesting. Well, you know what? Baker Mayfield is playing the Chargers, strong defense versus Chicago and their terrible defense.
Yeah, that was the main thing. And I really regretted last week I didn't play Sam Darnold. I still won, but last week I didn't play Sam Darnold. He had 40 points last week, so
Yeah.
that was a big one. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Tom, if you look at your 1K league, right? Like, because your team is actually pretty good. You got Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Hubbard had a good year, Smith and Jigba. Do you regret picking up Kyler Murray as your quarterback and Garrett Wilson as your other wide receiver?
Yeah, I think my biggest problem is Kyler Murray. I depended on Kyler Murray in all of those things. Like, for instance, one of our other leagues, that's why I went after Joe Burrow. So I traded Kyler Murray and then I traded Puka Nacua. I got back Garrett Wilson and also Joe Burrow. And so, in some sense, actually, look, Puka Nacua is going off like crazy, but now I have a stabilized quarterback in Joe Burrow who gets me 30 points a game. Kyler Murray is constantly 9 points, then 16 points, then 20 points, then back to nine. It was just frustrating. It was just frustrating, Kyler. I don't think I'll ever go with Kyler Murray again.
That and also Sam Laporta, who you picked up as your tight end. I mean, you're not even playing him right now, right? Because you got TJ Hawkinson. And so, like, you were expecting at least a good 10 to 15 points from that position as well, too.
Oh, Garrett Wilson was my number one pick. And then from that point, my second was Sam Laporta. I was totally expecting a guy who was going to get so many touches in Sam Laporta and Garrett Wilson under Aaron Rodgers. Both of them just didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam Laporta, though, I think these last couple weeks, they're heating up. Like, basically, teams like Detroit, they're preparing for now the playoffs. And so they need to get certain guys involved and really get them going. And that's why I feel like someone like Laporta, they know they need him in the playoffs. And so they may try to get him going. The other person is Isaiah Pacheco in Kansas City. I don't know if you guys saw that transition from Kareem Hunt to Pacheco. It's been a little bit, tenuous. Like they're trying to figure it out, but I feel like they know they need him, and so they're really going to feed him the ball. So like that's the kind of thing you need to look out for.
Yeah, Jet, and on the San Francisco side, I know you spent all your money on Garendo, and he may be out this week because it's a Thursday night game.
No, it's
Yep.
tonight.
Hopefully
Yeah, it's tonight. Yeah.
you'll squeak by Jimmy, and then he'll be prepared for next week's game.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
are you playing Garendo this? Are you
No.
taking the risk?
no. No, I'm not playing Garendo. I actually picked up in our keeper league. I picked up Taylor. Nobody picked up Patrick Taylor. So I just picked him up. So I'm going to throw him together with Kenny Walker. I mean with Charbonnet in that league. But no, I'm not playing Garendo. I don't think he's playing. If he is playing, he's going to be
So
limited given the sprain.
So they announced that he is going to play,
Mm.
but you're right. I don't know if he's going to be limited or not. Right? I can see him playing like a couple plays, and then they'll throw in Patrick Taylor, but it is
Yes.
going to be a shared running back position.
Hey, look, even especially if you're betting on DraftKings, one person to consider is Deebo Samuel. He was very upset that he wasn't getting the ball this week. With everyone injured, they may give him the ball coming out of the backfield and all of that stuff. So I wouldn't mind taking a risk on Deebo Samuel this week.
I was telling Tommy, so if you're looking at DraftKings, right, prop bets, I can pretty much assure you Puka Nacua is going to score a touchdown. I think Stafford's going to throw for at least one. Brock Purdy's going to throw for at least one. Kittle is doing amazing this year, right? I don't know if he'll get a touchdown, but you can expect him to at least get 50 yards this week as well, too.
Yeah. One thing I was going to mention too, just for anyone who listens, for the 5 people who listen, we always talk about, whether or not to draft a quarterback early. And I just think, just look at your free agent quarterback list right now. There are some good quarterbacks available across leagues. Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson. There's some really solid quarterbacks. So it just shows you got to be really careful if you're going to spend an early draft pick on a quarterback, because there's just so many of them, particularly down towards the latter part of the season.
Yeah, because Jet, you look at it, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, all of those guys. Look, even Caleb Williams is okay, way better than Kyler Murray as well too. Who would you have got? Dak Prescott, probably not as good. Patrick Mahomes, probably not as good. So now Josh Allen is great. Lamar Jackson is really, really good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you may have ended up with Patrick Mahomes, who's okay. And
Well, Jimmy's playing Mahomes this week against me, so that's why I'm hoping they run the ball.
I will say, if I look back on this past year's draft, I have often thought about, because I always pick up a Josh Allen early on, and he'll do well, right? And so that's one thing. I had to decide between Mahomes and Lamar Jackson this year, and I picked Mahomes in a number of leagues instead of Lamar Jackson, and that was a mistake because Lamar is so much better than Mahomes is.
Yeah, and speaking of that, if you guys saw the Chargers and Chiefs game, this is how lucky Patrick Mahomes' last field goal kick. It doinks and goes in. The Bears, it doinks and double doinks, and it doesn't end up. So somehow or another, Patrick Mahomes is like Steph Curry. Even though Steph Curry had a terrible game yesterday, they seem to always get the breaks.
Yeah, but at some point you got to say it's not luck. You make your own luck. I mean, I'm so impressed by the Chiefs. I think it's a really, I don't know. It's very intriguing. I saw this interesting stat though. If they somehow are able to make it to the Super Bowl, they are the first team to not beat the spread for more. Basically, they've lost against the spread more times than they've won against the spread. No team that has done that has ever won the Super Bowl. And so if they get to the Super Bowl, they will beat kind of odds. Basically, Vegas is saying, we don't think the Chiefs are as good as their record says.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it will depend on Pacheco, right? Pacheco will really determine if they can make that transition back to him. And it's going to take him a couple of weeks to be able to kind of get back to where he was. And the only problem that they have is, I mean, yes, they have Hollywood Brown coming up, but I just don't know who their wide receivers are.
Yeah. Hey, in terms of one player, a lot of times I know he's great. He's a wonderful team. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown over at Detroit Lions. As much as I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, he hasn't had the best season. He's okay. He's had some great games with 30
Yeah.
points, but he's been averaging 15, 16 for a number one wide receiver. I would rather have Jamar Chase. Look at Jamar Chase with so many touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, all that stuff. Amon-Ra may be a second, third round player next year for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's because there's so many offensive weapons in Detroit. Like they can beat you in so many ways. And this is again where you have to think about how is their style of play going to change in the playoffs. If I'm Detroit, I am running the ball like crazy, right? Ball control, control the clock, and then play action pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're right though, as far as fantasy, that hurts Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he doesn't care because he just wants to win. But for
Yeah.
fantasy purposes, yeah, it's really not as good.
Yeah. Jim, actually, Jed, because you like him a lot better. Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
He's had a terrible season. Do you think it is the beginning of the end for Tyreek Hill, or it's a
Oh no. No, not at all. If you so I've had him the whole season and yeah, he was hurting, but the last couple weeks he started to come on. He's had double digit points the last 2 weeks. I expect another good week this week. I mean, he's still the talent that he is. He just had no quarterback throwing to him. So I'm not worried about Tyreek Hill. What is he turning 30 this year maybe? Like he got several years left.
I do think that this week, because they're playing the Dolphins are playing the Texans this week, I do hope that they're going to have like more of an offensive matchup, right? Because I do need Nico Collins to do well. I want to see Tank Dell do well. The Texans' offense haven't been as good, but hopefully with the Dolphins going up there, I think that'd be good. Along with that, I mean, you've seen Jalen Waddle do better, and even A-Chain. A-Chain's been scoring so much touchdowns lately too.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, if you look at the rookie wide receivers, we were very high on Marvin Harrison Jr. Then
Yeah.
there was Malik Neighbors, but suddenly in the last couple of weeks, Roma Dunze has really been coming up. For next year, if you were to look at the three wide receivers, who's still top? Is it still Marvin Harrison?
No, I would say, I mean, I would rank them as Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, and then maybe like Brian
Brian
Thomas.
Thomas?
You know, Roma Dunze, I do think that they're playing for life after Keenan Allen. I do also wonder if DJ Moore is going to be around as well too, given all the stuff that happened this year. But Roma Dunze is pretty good. But I picked those three people before him.
Yeah, it's interesting that we all said because remember how much I spent like I think $100 on Marvin Harrison to get him, and I was just thinking, in our keeper league we only keep the top four. I don't know if he's going to make the cut. I mean, he's had a tough year, but we always also know with wide receivers, usually the second year and the third year is the best years. So I think I still have to hold out and see what happens next year.
I mean, I don't know if it's in our dynasty league or I was listening to other people's dynasty league. Some people got Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase because they drafted these guys in the later rounds, right? Like, and so if you're keeping like a Brian Thomas, you're keeping like some of these wide receivers who you drafted later, they can become number one, number two receivers later on.
Yeah. Hey, look, I am that guy who is in our keeper league, and I have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase,
Yeah.
but I did not make the playoffs at all because I have Kyler Murray, Kareem Hunt, and also Debo Samuel as some of my players because all my guys are injured. And so it has been a terrible year for me.
Yeah. Oh, hey, actually, speaking of wide receivers, let me ask you guys because I saw this on Tommy's. Don't you guys think that Smith and Jigba is now almost like the number one receiver in Seattle?
That's a really interesting one. I think you might be. I was just looking at DK Metcalf and seeing how I basically put Terry McLaurin in instead of DK Metcalf on one of my
Yeah.
teams, and I wouldn't have done that first half of the season. So I think you might be right. It's been a little bit of an up and down season for Seattle and for Geno Smith too. So I think it's been tricky, but I still feel like Metcalf is this physical specimen, and so yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
And on a separate note, look at Charbonnet emerging out there because
Oh,
Kenneth
Charbonnet
Walker,
is amazing. Yeah.
when he plays, he's good, but he's so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Oh, Charbonnet was great last week.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed by Kenneth Walker. I think that's one of the reasons why I traded him, is because he's been so inconsistent. And I do think, I do wonder, right, in the offseason, if you're going to see some changes with Metcalf not being on Seattle anymore. And potentially, I can see if someone told me tomorrow that Kenneth Walker was traded or let go, I can see that as well, too.
Well, the other running back, obviously, Christian McCaffrey has to be the biggest disappointment of last year. I mean, that's, I think, obvious. But I noticed you're starting Jonathan Taylor, Jimmy, and I think
Oh,
Jonathan
yeah.
Taylor, he has been a big disappointment. I mean, I think the Indianapolis Colts in general, remember, we all thought they were going to be up there, high flying and one of the up and coming teams, and they've been very disappointing.
I think ever since they traded Anthony Richardson, or I had drafted Anthony Richardson, I don't think they ever figured out exactly how they use Jonathan Taylor, right? Because the dump offs, the plays that you usually would use a Jonathan Taylor for, essentially Richardson has taken over, right? The only weeks he's done well this week is when Flacco has been quarterback, and I think he might have gotten that one touchdown or so when Richardson's played, but he's not been consistent at all.
Oh,
Oh, by the
Jonathan
way, that
Taylor.
lineup isn't set yet.
Oh, look at Derrick Henry with the Baltimore Ravens. I think if Jonathan Taylor was part of the LA Chargers or something like that, he would be so well, especially with their blocking scheme, all of that stuff. I think he does need a very good blocking line in order for him to really do well.
Hey, did you guys see that? I saw this on TikTok. They basically, it was from the internal discussions with the Giants when they were talking about Saquon Barkley, and there was the one guy who was like, "Wait, are you sure we should let this guy go? We shouldn't pay him a little bit more because he's really an elite talent." And I was like, there was one guy who tried to, be the voice of reason, and so they were calling him out.
Well, what I was reading this article or listening to this interview. They were talking about Belichick joining North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
And so they were talking about how it's going to be different for him now that he's got NIL stuff. So did you guys know? So NIL, usually the big money has been reserved for like quarterbacks and wide receivers. Do you know who has gotten the bulk of some of the big money on these teams?
It's got to be Colorado's cornerback, right? It's got
Oh
to be
no, which
Hunter.
positions? Which
Yeah,
positions?
so cornerback. So cornerback. That's what I'm
Quarterback
saying.
and offensive linemen.
Oh,
Offensive linemen
wow.
have gotten tons because I think that's
Wow.
one of the things that a lot of colleges have
Interesting.
realized is you need. I mean, as much as people will say, I don't know who these guys are, right? Like, I'm not giving an endorsement. NIL money has essentially allowed a lot of these teams to bring in good offensive linemen, and that's why the quarterbacks and the running backs have done well. Like, look at Boise State.
Interesting.
Alabama has not done that, so that's why they haven't done well. But some of these teams, like Georgia, has done that so well.
Yeah. With today's game, San Francisco 49ers, Cooper Kupp, is he no longer the number one wide receiver in LA?
I mean, I can see them getting rid of him in the offseason. I think Puka Nacua is definitely your hot wide receiver that I would bet on, right? And then between him and Kyron Williams, I do think that you're going to get a touchdown for sure out Puka Nacua. I do think that Cooper Kupp will get his yards, but I do think that if you're going to play somebody, you're going to play a Puka Nacua.
I agree with that, Jimmy, but let me just say long term for dynasty purposes, I am not a fan of Puka Nakua. That
No, yeah,
guy
me
is
neither.
he's
Yeah,
too reckless. Like he's gonna get injured. Like the guy needs to figure out how to just like take it down one notch so he can stay healthy. It reminds me of Debo Samuel. You can't draft Debo Samuel and Puka Nakua and depend on them for 16 games, 18 games. They're not gonna last.
but no, you're right. But you want to ride the wave right now because he is hot, right?
Oh yeah,
And so when
yeah.
he's hot, that's the guy you want to pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, Jim, remember when you traded me Puka Nacua early in their season when he was
I remember
injured?
that.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
turned it around and traded him for Joe Burrow and Garrett Wilson. Now, I'm
Yeah.
kind of regretting it because Garrett Wilson is very good, but
Yeah.
I've gotten myself Joe Burrow to really be able to solidify my lineup here.
Actually,
Hey,
I was thinking about one of my lineups, and okay, let me tell you the original team I have. So I sneaked in the playoffs. I'm doing fine, right? But my original team, and these are the people I traded. I had Puka Nacua, Terry McLaurin, J.K. Dobbins, Jalen Hurts. I think if I
it's pretty
kept
good.
those guys and didn't trade them, I
Yeah.
would be in a better position today than not.
And Jed, I ended up getting J.K. Dobbins and J.K. Dobbins, and I also ended up getting Puka Nacua, which then I traded for all of those for defensive players, all of that stuff. So
Yeah. Well, some of them, I think Dobbins is a good example where you could use him like first half of the season, I think great, but if you traded him like right around the midpoint, I think you could have got basically you want to it's like buying stocks. Like, sell high, buy low. And I feel like you could have maybe gotten a little bit better out of that. But
Yeah. I think next year when we do this again, I do think that there comes a point in midseason where we need to start talking about who are some of the players like a Kenneth Walker, like a J.K. Dobbins, where you almost have to kind of get rid of them. Because you're right, a lot of these players who are so hot, elite neighbors is another thing. They are not pertinent right now, right? And so you almost have to kind of switch your teams around mid-season in order to prepare for the playoffs.
Yeah. But then you also get a player like a Terry McLaren that was really hot, and you're sitting there, he can't be this good. But he's been that good under Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, even Jalen Hurts has been really hot this year as well, too, right? So if you were to draft him in a quarterback along, like he was up there right after Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, I take that guy over Patrick Mahomes all day right now.
Jed, Christian McCaffrey. With
Ah,
everything
so
that you
sad.
know about Christian McCaffrey, third round, second round, fourth round
Oh
next year?
yeah. You're probably right. Probably third round. I mean, what a talent! Just like really sad for the guy. I mean, he clearly, wants to do everything right, and is clearly an amazing talent. But yeah, no, I don't think you can draft him before the thing is in so think if you go back to look at the correlation between the teams that are in playoffs versus the teams who drafted their first two picks basically carried them. Like that's the importance of the first three rounds is those guys have to be your kind of the core of your team and you can count on them. And Christian McCaffrey is just not that anymore. So unfortunately.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, a lot of times we always look at different teams. Like everyone, if they're playing against the Cowboys, we're picking the other team. If they're playing against the Carolina Panthers, we're picking the other team. But this week, the Cowboys are playing the Panthers. So who are you going to pick?
Both.
Actually, funny enough, both teams are actually doing pretty good, right? I would say
Yep.
I think, right, like I do think CD Lamb is a pretty solid bit to score a touchdown. I do think that Cooper Rush is doing pretty good in terms of yardage. And on the other side, Adam Thielen's a good play, as well as a Hubbard, especially now that Jonathan Brooks is out again and put on the IR. I think a Chuba Hubbard is actually a really good play.
Hey,
Jim,
the Panthers have covered the spread the last 3 weeks and almost had some pretty big
Oh, yeah.
upsets. So they've been playing very well.
I feel like, yeah.
Jim, if there is one player that has carried me a lot through this year, Chuba Hubbard has
Chuba Hubbard,
really
yep.
helped me out.
Yeah.
Well, and you got him towards the end, right? 'Cause
Oh, very
I don't
late.
think
Yeah.
no one really knew that he was going to be good. I was thinking Jonathan Brooks was going to be good. So to be honest, I didn't even pay attention to Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. And in a couple leagues, he was sitting on the waivers because no one really cared about Carolina. And
Yeah.
Chuba Hubbard was what? Maybe he'll sit there and play for the first 3 weeks until Brooks comes in, but he has been phenomenal, Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was one of the guys who would not draft anyone from Carolina. But now I think you definitely can. Again, for me, there's always certain teams I stay away from, but then you have to change
England?
that. Yep, like New England. I don't touch New England.
Like, for instance, remember when Deontay Johnson got traded over to Baltimore? Deontay Johnson, Baltimore, he did pretty well in Carolina. He's terrible over
Yeah.
at Pittsburgh. Terrible.
Yeah, there are a couple good games. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now. You got Pittsburgh versus the Eagles. I think that's going to be a pretty good game. You've got the Bills versus the Lions. I would say that's one of the big games this week.
Jim, I'm looking at the Jets versus the Jaguars because I need Garrett Wilson to have a very good game.
Oh, yeah.
I really need Brees Hall is out. I'm hoping they're going to go to Garrett Wilson here.
Okay, we have to talk. If we're going to talk about the Jets, we got to talk. You guys heard about Aaron Rodgers in his calling the aliens talk? Did you guys hear about this?
No.
You didn't hear about this? Oh,
No.
so on the latest, okay, you got to look this up. On his latest episode, he's being serious. He said that there's a lot of UFO activity in New Jersey, and he's going to do some kind of ceremony where you use like a lighter, like a laser, and you're trying to call aliens. I was like, that guy is such a nut job. I'm so glad. It would be so interesting to see what happens to him. I don't think anyone's going to draft or sign this guy next year because he looks so bad this year. But it'll be interesting to see what happens because he is a nut job.
The funny thing is his numbers are actually pretty good. I mean, they haven't been winning at all, but their numbers have actually been pretty good the last couple of games.
Yeah. Where I think he's gonna end up going back to the Raiders, and then from that point, Adams is gonna want to go back to the Raiders.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, because they spent all this time and effort trading for Devontae Adams, and you would
Yeah.
think Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, all that stuff. But it goes back to the very fact that their offensive line is terrible and they can't protect them.
See, the reason why I don't think the Raiders is because everyone keeps speculating. I could see this. The Raiders want to draft Deion Sanders' son as quarterback.
Yep.
They want to make a big splash.
Yeah. But then you also have the Giants as well, too. They're going to be looking for someone as well, too, in terms of quarterback. And so depending on who Deion Sanders' son goes to. But you also got to deal with Deion Sanders as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Baltimore versus New York Giants. Speaking of the Giants, if you think that Derrick Henry is going to score 2 or more touchdowns, this is the game to do it because I think he's going to run all over the New York Giants.
I like that. That's a really good bet. Yeah, 2+ touchdowns. And then, of course, with Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia, he's chasing the all-time season record for rushing yards. So just watch that because, again, teams are aware of that kind of stuff, and they will definitely try to play to that if they can. So look out for both of those.
Speaking of records, did you guys see how, what do you call it, that one sack leader went after Brett Favre?
Gastineau. Mark Gastineau was upset with Brett Favre. Yep. Yeah. I think he's right. I remember that play, guys. I remember watching that and it's like, oh, what happened there? It was obvious he took a dive. And so but apparently what's his name? JJ Watt actually has the real record now, right?
TJ Watt.
TJ Watt. Yeah, TJ Watt, yeah.
Because he tied Michael Strahan.
Yeah.
And I would say that he's more of the sack leader than Michael Strahan is.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one, Kirk Cousins, signed free agent. At what point will Michael Penix be replacing Kirk Cousins here?
Didn't they already announce that? Did they announce that Penix?
No, they've speculated.
Okay.
No, they have not announced it. But I could see them going towards a Kirk Cousins, even though they paid him all of this money.
Well, he was terrible. I mean, that's why we were talking about revenge games. I'm sure he wanted to have a revenge game last week, but he was terrible. So it didn't work out.
The problem with Kirk Cousins is he throws a lot of interceptions. And so every time they're driving, and for some reason, I don't understand why they don't run Bijan Robinson more and allow him to carry it. It opens the door for Kirk Cousins to do a lot more things.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is not your 400, 500-yard thrower anymore. They don't have the offensive line. Just go to Bijan Robinson. And then from that point on, use more Drake London. Kyle Pitts is nowhere, but use more Drake London, Darnell Mooney, but started off with Bijan Robinson.
You guys believe in Sam Darnold? They haven't signed. He's only signed through this year, having a great year in Minnesota. Obviously, if they have a really good run in the playoffs, they'll have to do something. But you guys believe he's for real?
I think he's a good quarterback. So here's my thing. I do think you're right. I think if they make a decent run in the playoffs, they're going to be forced to give him and he's going to want a big contract. He's not settling for a 1-year contract, right?
No.
The only reason why I'm guessing they're hesitating is you got Daniel Jones as backup, and you got the Michigan quarterback who's technically supposed to be their starting quarterback, right? And so they've got a good plethora of quarterbacks. So my guess is they're hesitating. But if he takes them to playoffs, even let's say the championship game, he's going to be another Geno Smith. What do you call it? Who's the Tampa Bay guy?
Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield. He's going to be one of those guys. They're going to be forced to have to sign him to a multi-year contract.
But they do have a young quarterback waiting in the wings from Michigan. Look at the other teams that need quarterbacks. Dallas Cowboys needs a quarterback. From that point on, Tennessee Titans, New Orleans Saints. I think if Sam Darnold was on any of these 3 teams, Kamara's run, you have Tony Pollard and all this. Even on Tennessee Titans, they have a decent defense. Right there, you have it right there.
No, but here's my thing is, I think they much rather, if he takes them to the playoffs, takes them to a championship game, they're going to sign him. And I can see them trading the Michigan quarterback because they at least have a known commodity that fits well with Jefferson and Addison and has shown that he can win. I think that instead of trying to develop a new guy, they're going to try to trade that guy. That's my guess.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, the White Sox traded Garrett Crochet over to the Boston Red Sox. What do you think of the White Sox?
No comment. I have no idea. I'm surprised you went there. I thought we were going to talk about the NBA, or you could have talked about Juan Soto and his huge new contract.
Oh, I do want to talk about the NBA. Juan Soto is great, but no thoughts about the White Sox trading their best player. Now, at the same time, and the Cubs making no efforts at all. Now, there's rumors they're probably going to trade Bellinger over to the New York Yankees, and they're trying to make a trade for Kyle Tucker over at the Houston Astros right now.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, but nothing.
Baseball's, I'm amazed how much money baseball pays their players for something so boring.
Yeah. And then also yesterday, did you guys watch the Golden State versus Houston
Yes.
Rockets?
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna say, guys, I love the NBA Cup. I think it is such a great mid-season kind of one and done chance. I mean, to see Atlanta turn around and beat the Celtics, beat the Cavs, and then last night beat the Knicks. That was a great game if you guys got to watch it. And then the Golden State game as well. But I love this cup tournament in the middle of the season. I think it's great.
I was texting with Tommy yesterday. I was pretty sure Knicks, because Knicks are actually favored to win the cup. I don't know if you knew that. That's one of the reasons why I actually picked them to beat Atlanta yesterday, but they lost, right? And Golden State almost, I was thinking Golden State was going to pull that upset out, almost beat Houston. But Houston's got some good players. Houston's a pretty good team.
Well, what I like.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say what I like was the it seems like the league is trying to say, hey, we're gonna let defense play a little bit more. There's been so many complaints about, it's just an offensive league. And so they really let them play yesterday. And Houston, their defensive effort was awesome. Same with Atlanta. And so I think that's why they both got rewarded.
If you look at Mazzulla, their head coach, he got his start over in San Antonio. Then he went over to Boston. Now he's over in Houston. They have a great defensive team. You have Sengun, who's really good. You have Amin Thompson, who's really good. But what he's saying, the coach is saying, look at Terry Eason, because he says he reminds him of a young Kawhi Leonard from his days over in San Antonio. He's long, he's fast, he's everywhere. He can guard anyone on the court. And so watching them, he was on Steph Curry quite a lot yesterday, and Steph Curry only scored 19 points. But that's I love watching Houston play.
I have Eason on my fantasy league, and he's been amazing. So he locked down Steph Curry, and then yesterday Jalen Johnson on Atlanta was on Brunson. Yeah. Brunson could not get a if you guys see Brunson, I think he only scored 10 points maybe. He shut the guy down.
Yeah. No, I never thought Johnson would be so good. But yesterday, if you think about it, Karl-Anthony Towns and Johnson. I mean, that's why Johnson was able to Trey Murray was able to do so well, is because Johnson was able to control the defense for those guys.
Yeah, it was a fun game.
Like, for instance, would you rather have a Jalen Johnson who could score you 15 points and 10 rebounds compared to a Zach LaVine that gives you 25 points but can't guard anywhere, or a Damian Lillard who could score you 30 points but can't guard anyone?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've never been a Zach LaVine fan. That guy drives me nuts. All he can do is shoot. But the Bulls are just the Bulls are not they're not building for the future. They're just, I don't know what they're doing.
I mean, going back to the cup, here's the thing. It's going to be Atlanta versus Milwaukee, which I do think Milwaukee will end up winning that thing. And then it's going to be OKC versus Houston. As good as Houston is, it's going to be OKC. And then it's going to be OKC versus I think OKC is going to end up winning this thing because they're so good.
Oh, Oklahoma City is so good, guys. That I actually think the Oklahoma City Houston matchup, that's the championship. Whoever wins out of that is going to beat Milwaukee or Atlanta, in my opinion.
But Oklahoma, they don't even have Chet Holmgren.
Exactly.
And he's out, but they're still going at it.
Man, Oklahoma City, the fact that they got that the Hartenstein guy the guy from New York, the big tall dude, he has been he's been 12, 13 rebounds a game. they are killing it in Oklahoma City. I'm excited for them, having grown up in Oklahoma. I mean, it's a really good year for them. I've got money on them to win the championship, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, seriously, Jed. A lot of times, if you're on DraftKings and you need a double double, you can always count on Hardenstein to get you a
Yep.
double double every
Yep.
single game.
Yeah, Hartenstein, I've been picking. So one of my favorite picking, if you're picking points on DraftKings, is Shea Alexander for the basically plus 40 in terms of the combination of points, rebounds, and assists,
Yeah.
and then Hartenstein for the rebounds, and then you can either throw in Dort for some 3-pointers, or you can throw in the other Jalen, who's
Jalen
for
Williams.
points.
So
Yeah,
I
Williams.
usually
Yeah.
so on DraftKings for player combos, they usually have him at like plus 20 at 25 combo, and he's actually always a pretty good, like he'll
Yep.
get that like 4 out of 5 times.
Yep.
Yeah. I was telling Jimmy, I do enjoy betting on basketball more than I do football because it's so fast and you get to do it every single day and look at the matchups and everything like that. I do love it. Now, yesterday, I was putting all my bets on Curry to score more than 20 points. I said,
Ugh.
oh, this is great. And he scored 19 points. It drove me crazy. I lost my
Wait, so Tommy, you're back? You're playing again? I thought you were taking a break.
Jimmy was helping me understand the importance of round robin. Just put it in there and not forget about it. So I've been doing about 3 or 4 of the round robins. And
I
Okay.
do like the round robins is pretty fun. I enjoy
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a DraftKings show now that
Hey, we
Now-
can. I agree with you though, Tommy. I think for some reason, in-game betting on NBA games is more fun. Like I feel like I enjoy that more, and I also feel like maybe I know it a little bit better. Like I feel like I know the NBA players a little bit better than I do the football players, and the football players seems like it's a little bit less predictable.
Well, I'll tell you this: like if you're looking at Houston, right? Let's just say even yesterday's game, Sengun, always a good 30-player combo, right? Like
Yeah.
he hits it every single time. Karl Anthony Towns hits it every time. So there's just certain people that if you see them at 30, they're gonna hit it. I was usually what's his name? Who's the guard in New York that didn't do too well yesterday?
Jalen Brunson.
Usually he'll hit it, but
Yeah.
yesterday because he had Johnson on him,
Yep.
did not even come close.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, let me quickly go through some of these things. Like today, if we were to look at today's games, Detroit, Boston Celtics, what would you pick? Like,
Jason
for instance,
Tatum.
double with Cade Cunningham. I would do that. Points for Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
Yeah. I would say player combo for, I don't know about Jaylen Brown, but player combo for Tatum, pretty solid. Cade Cunningham, double, pretty solid.
Yeah. Toronto, Miami, who would you pick?
RJ
Oh.
Barrett, player combo 25.
Yep. And Hero has been. Is he back? He's healthy, right?
he's back.
I think
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
back. Yeah. Hero's been
Yeah.
pretty. Hero, I mean, enough where they're playing. I mean, the rumors out there is they're planning to trade Jimmy Butler.
And the problem I have with Jimmy Butler when you play, you never know when he goes out mid-game with the injury. So that's my frustration with Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now,
But
Toronto
Hero, I think,
Raptors.
is worth it.
Yeah, and now at the same time, Toronto Raptors. What do you call it? What's his name? Scotty Barnes is out.
Scotty Barnes. Yeah.
So now Roger Barrett is good, but then you
Barrett.
look at this guy named Grady Dick, who gets you a lot of points and a lot of 3-pointers too.
Interesting.
But if you're looking for me, I was telling Tommy, I was like, I look for the pretty consistent one. I need at least 1 or 2 players that I know will hit it every time. RJ Barrett, at least from a 25-plus player combo, will always hit it, especially this week, now that Scotty Barnes is out as well, too.
Last one, Sacramento Kings and New Orleans Pelicans. Look, you have Ingram out, you have Zion out, you're going to Dante Murray. And at the same time, Sacramento Kings, Sabonis, always double every single time out.
Mhm. Yeah. Murray is great because if you looked at the last couple points, he's done well since he's come back from the IRR, and they're going to need him to score points. And Sabonis, Fox is actually pretty good as well too. And then even sometimes, what do you call it? DeMar DeRozan,
Yeah.
But I do think Sabonis is usually a pretty good hit at 30.
All right. Anything last thoughts, Jen, as we wrap up, Jim?
No.
Jen,
Good luck.
don't one of us needs to get a win out of this. Well, one of us will get a win out of this, right?
Yes,
But
well, yeah, but then we need to win the following week. We can't just win this week. We gotta win the following week so that we can. But we did good. 2 out of the 3 of us got to the playoffs. That's a pretty good percentage. So we'll see what happens now.
I don't know. We can't let these guys beat us, all right? But I'll tell you this: I'm looking at their teams, and they drafted well because Saquon, Jalen
Yeah,
Hurts, Cooper Kupp,
yeah,
all of those guys really saved them.
yeah.
All right. Talk soon, everyone.